We are back, not that we ever left, really. I'm still Jared Wynn, still your loyal host, bringing you more of the loadout on the Daily Dot. That's capital T, capital D, capital D. Don't forget any of that. I am joined now by the one, the only Sir Richard Lewis. Richard, how are you tonight?
Good. Just recovering from a bout of tonsillitis. I'm feeling pretty shitty still, but this is like the first day in 4 days I've been able to have a beer and sit upright. So
that's a good
to that.
improvement. Yeah. Hey, cheers to sitting upright and being able to drink alcohol again.
But yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough. So we'll just try and power through.
The weeks have not treated you too well with the moving into Sweden and the cold and now the tonsillitis, Richard. I'm feeling for you there.
Well, I think the cold was
okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it was blossoming into.
So the drinking until it went away didn't quite work out that time.
Yeah, it turns out that was a bad call.
Yeah, was it? I'm shocked to hear that, actually. I figured it was a great call, but I guess, you can't win them all.
Yeah, so, I don't know if there's obviously, for the benefit of medical students that are watching, they don't need to know this, but for everybody else, if you're getting tonsillitis and you're getting pretty sick, don't just drink half a bottle of whiskey. That isn't going to fix it. That's a myth. Definitely don't do that. Which reminds me, by the way, I've still got half a bottle of whiskey.
There you go. Wow, a token of your time with tonsillitis.
I'm sure it aids recovery.
It does. I've heard that from medical professionals. If there's any in the chat, please confirm. Don't deny. Just confirm. By no means deny Richard his drinking to recover. Some breaking news today, actually, just a couple hours ago. I'm not sure if all of our viewers saw this, but we certainly saw it ourselves. That TSM has brought in a new player in their League of Legends team to potentially light a fire under the ass of the existing ADC. Now, I have been talking about Wild Turtle being no longer a top 5, like top half in his region ADC, which is unfortunate if you're playing for TSM, who have, of course, designs on Worlds to not be considered top 5 in North America. I think this kind of confirms my suspicion in that regard, that TSM have brought in Keith McBrief, the former Team Liquid substitute, who previously lit a fire under Piglet's ass and won a good number of games with Team Liquid, actually, before Piglet was subbed back in and got on to better success. And now Piglet working out quite well with Team Liquid. So Keith coming in to TSM, he's going to split scrims evenly, we've been told, with Wild Turtle, and they will evaluate the performance of both players going from there. It was kind of an awkward thing, because in the video they released, Reginald actually said that Wild Turtle was being benched. The first time he said they've benched a player for pure performance reasons. But this might not be a benching necessarily, because I think he's still going to play this weekend, for example, in the LCS. So
I mean, come on, Jared, you're an educated man.
Oh, I am.
You can see what's going on here.
I can.
Or at least I think you can. I'm pretty sure we all can as well.
Yes.
The one thing you can say about TSM is, well, they might be ruthless in applying a lot of their transfer moves and whatnot. The one thing they're not is particularly good at obfuscating what they're really up to at any given moment. Subtlety has never been Reginald's strong point. I doubt it will be moving forward. So for me, what this clearly is a attempt to motivate Wild Turtle into picking up their game, because TSM currently joint second with Dignitas, of all people, their arch rival CLG above them.
A blast from the past here. It's like 3 years ago all of a sudden.
Yeah.
TSM CLG Dig top 3.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the way they've played, it's fair to say that Wild Turtle, and look, I think this has been the case for a long while. It's quite interesting, actually. TSM fans are quite a curious breed of esports fan, in the sense that now no one would dare to criticize Wild Turtle a season ago, or another two splits ago, when criticism was just as warranted. I remember MonteCristo criticizing him. There was an apoplexy. Thorin did the same. Apoplexy. Now that Reginald's come out and released a video saying, we're thinking about benching him, everyone's like, yeah, I always knew Wild Turtle was, He really needed to raise his game a little bit,
Right.
and that's pretty much a typical TSM fan in a nutshell. Like now that the organization has effectively agreed with what everyone else in the scene has been saying for the longest time, it's okay to admit it now. It's like, in fact, you would be anti TSM
Right.
if you didn't agree with it.
The TSM thing to
So
do is to say he's bad now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, the way I look at it is, I don't think Keith will actually play a game for TSM unless the absolute worst happens. But this is basically Reginald's way of letting Wild Turtle know you are on notice. I have cut bigger names than you, and I will do it again if you do not start meeting the standards that I expect. And let's be clear here: if TSM had a world-class AD carry, they'd be a terrifying prospect because they've already got the best support in NA.
Yeah, they don't have one right now. That's pretty clear. They don't have a North American class AD carry, actually. They don't have one who can stand with the best in the region that he's in, so certainly not in the world. He just has a habit of, let's say, putting himself out of... I saw actually a great post by someone, a TSM fan, saying, you know what? If he would just get in better position and not get cut out all the time, he'd be great. Well, shit. There you go.
Mate, he's cracked it.
Yeah,
Give that guy a job, right?
Let Reginald know, actually. We could take care of this whole key thing right away, you know? Hey, Wild Turtle, stop
but look,
getting cut out.
Here's the thing as well. There's another reason why it's Keith, obviously. I'm sure everybody's aware of, the group of teams in NA that have effectively unionized and all work very closely together. They are, of course, Team Liquid. They are TSM. They are Cloud9. CLG, I believe, are on the periphery. They used to be involved. And by bringing in a player that's already contracted but isn't a starter with another roster, it keeps it clean, keeps it simple. It's not very complicated. There's no mismanagement of expectations. The organization aren't going to be upset. In fact, this was probably something that happened in the aftermath of a manager's meeting. These guys go out and hang out together all the time. They're always talking and strategizing. They very often speak to sponsors together as a group. They very often speak to tournament organizers together as a group. And I imagine Reginald saying something along the lines of, wouldn't it be great, like, Wild Turtle was, like, just a little bit better or something? And, Steve Arhenset or Victor Cousins, whoever it was, probably Steve, turned around and said, when we had problems with Piglet, you know how we motivated him? We put this guy called Keith in the team, and it seemed to work wonders. He really got his shit together by playoffs. Reginald's like, but, we don't have Keith in our team. Steve goes, hey, it's okay. He's a sub, man. You can borrow him. And there we go.
Yeah, NBD, it's fine. Just under the table.
Yeah, and one hand washes the other, and the NA scene's happy. So
yeah, or at least they'll be happy if Wild Turtle plays well. Any possibility that we do see Keith play if Wild Turtle perhaps continues his poor form, regardless of Keith's entrance?
I think if they're going to put Keith in, like I say, this is what has to happen, okay? Keith has to knock it out the park in scrims, which he will have minimal opportunity to do so anyway, because they won't be scrimming with him and then playing LCS games with Wild Turtle. He'll obviously be getting scrims when Wild Turtle's unavailable, or they'll make specific time to try him out in a few games. But he won't have a lot of opportunity to shine. Right. Second, Wild Turtle will have to go into the LCS games and absolutely suck. I mean, play worse than he is right now, because ultimately I don't think it warrants dropping him at the moment. And if you were going to drop him, I don't know if Keith's the guy you'd drop him for.
Especially mid-split, it seems like an odd
time. It's a little bit dubious, but still, it's there's always a chance that maybe Wild Turtle will be like super upset and oh my god, it wasn't going to last forever. Who knew? And
just go on.
And when that happens, maybe his performance will dip. Maybe he's not the kind of guy who gets motivated by pressure. So if he plays bad, and the third component, if TSM are playing absolute terrible teams that particular week, maybe Keith gets a run. But if those three things don't align, the Keith McBreath is nothing more than a sinister, shadowy figure to keep Wild Turtle on his toes.
Yeah, I guess the one good thing for Keith is that if he does play well with TSM in his trial there, and he did play well with Liquid before, maybe this kind of sets him up for the next split as a potential ADC for a team coming into the LCS, or a good alternative for someone else who wants to swap one out, because he's shown himself to be a strong player. I don't know if he's a Wild Turtle replacement level player, but he's shown himself to be strong
Well,
enough to play
actually,
LCS.
I think the only thing he's really lacking that Wild Turtle has, um, well, it's kind of weird. It's kind of awkward, actually. I don't know if I can finish that sentence because on the okay, Wild Turtle definitely has experience. Like
He
that goes
does.
without saying. He's
Yes.
played for TSM. Keith hasn't got anywhere near that level of experience. So that's factor number one. Factor number two is that while I think Wild Turtle isn't a very intellectual player, if you follow me, he's clearly very good at the raw mechanics. Like he knows how to rank up in solo queue. This is a guy who had like 3 or 4 accounts in the top 10 before Riot sort of took those extra accounts away to sort of filter out the people that were just idling in Masters tier. So this is somebody who really understands solo queue. But the problem is, of course, solo queue and the team game are two very different things. And I think that's been really what stopped him from achieving true greatness as an AD carry, that he hasn't been able to take his application and understanding of solo queue and then expand upon it in a team environment. Keith, on the other hand, is young, he's keen, doesn't have experience, certainly doesn't understand solo queue or know how to apply it to the same degree as Wild Turtle, but he's hungry, enthusiastic, and willing to learn, and clearly copes well under pressure. Because this is a guy who stepped in for Piglet, who's won Worlds, and he's just like, I'm just going to do my thing, and there we go. So
He did his thing pretty well for them, actually.
yeah, I mean, I think ultimately what we can say is that as things stand, Wild Turtle has plateaued. I think you would actually need to erase part of his brain to help him get to the next level. Yeah. And obviously you can't do that. There's no such thing as a memory remain.
Not yet.
Keith, on the other hand, hasn't peaked. He hasn't hit his maximum potential yet. And I think if it weren't TSM, any other team that didn't have the expectation of finishing first, didn't have the expectation of going to Worlds, you would take the gamble, and you would gamble on the developing player.
I think Keith could be a better option, honestly, but I don't think
long term, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think mid split. Maybe the off season is the time to do that, but not the middle of the summer split, especially when you have Worlds coming up. So I don't think we're going to see that change there. But certainly, prospects for Keith coming out of this, I think, long term, and Wild Turtle on notice. I think if he plays, even if he plays at this current level, he'll stay on the team for now above Keith, but he may be looked at quite harshly in the offseason. I would be surprised if TSM were to falter and he would maintain his current level for him to be around next spring. Very surprised, actually. One more before we get into our main topics, actually. You mentioned Cloud9, Richard. I predicted a few weeks ago that Cloud9 could actually miss the playoffs, and I was somewhat not taken seriously, I must say. They have looked like a shit show. They truly have. Did you have any idea that this team could potentially fall this far as they have?
I think, and yourself, there's no point in me denying it, because obviously the video evidence is there. But I've always been a big proponent of the move of Incarnation to Cloud9. I still think the team will click. I know, obviously, right now, joint 8th with Team 8, 2 for 6. It's not good. But, this isn't, this is, the halfway, well, not even the halfway point of the season.
That's right.
There is plenty of time to turn it round. They've got a run of games coming up where they've got very beatable opponents, and they will climb up. There's no question about that. They're not going to finish that far down the table. The problem is, obviously, not necessarily with Incarnation, who I think's performed pretty well in the laning phases. The problem has been that with the absence of a true shot caller they're all used to, the constituent parts of the machine haven't clicked together in the way they should. They haven't been able to form Devastator. That's what they haven't been able to do. Right. So they've got all 5 of the Constructicons there, but they just can't make Devastator, basically, to use a Transformers analogy. And I'm pretty sure they'll be able to do it. But yeah, I think obviously right now what we can safely say is, for all High's deficiency as a laner, and let's be clear, especially towards the end, it was painful watching him. The fact that Cloud9 are now going on a bad run of results doesn't alter the fact that watching High lane was painful towards the end before he stood down. But ultimately, it's his shot calling now, I think we can place in a context and say in his absence, the team is going to suffer. So whoever they've replaced it with in terms of shot calling, clearly not at the highest level. They need to get there and fast. But Cloud9 play better under pressure. They've done it historically. As soon as the pressure's there, as soon as they start feeling it, I'm sure the results will come.
Well, they should be feeling it now. It's certainly there. It should be there.
Well, yeah, exactly. I look forward to seeing what happens next week. But I got to say, again, any notion that they're really they went into this weekend feeling pressure. You don't. Lemonation's not on Reddit saying, "Hey, I'll shave my beard if we go 2-0." If they're really feeling it, there's obviously still a good mood in the camp. They did lose to CLG, which that's a crushing defeat. But as I said, they got winnable games on the horizon, and Cloud9. They're just unruffle. You can't ruffle them. They cope well under pressure.
They just need some games against TDK. That kind of fix things up, I think. If they just play TDK a few times, that'd be great actually for them.
Well, I forget what their results are actually. Let me just double check that before I commit.
TDK.
No. I'm checking Cloud9 actually.
Yeah.
Cloud9 have got TDK coming up, so that's their next game.
Good on you, Cloud9.
Right, so there we are. There's a free win. And then the second day, they've got Impulse, who are a 50-50 team. I think Cloud9 will win that. And then the week after, they got Team Liquid. Historically, they've always done very well against Curse and Team Liquid. And then after that, they play Team 8. So you could win all 4 of those games as a Cloud9 person and be on 6-6. So, I think the next 2 weeks are absolutely crucial. I think if they lose 2 out of those 4 games, they've got problems. But I think those 2 weeks back to back are very kind indeed. Like say, playing Team Dragon Knights first and foremost, who I think they're going to set a new record low in the league. I think they're going to go past Coast, Dragonborns, everyone else. I mean, I don't even see how TDK are going to get a win this season.
Yeah, so, I watched the Team Impulse game against TDK actually, where they shut them out. No kills, no objectives the entire game, and it was just a fascinating game to watch. Rush was trying to die. He wanted to give TDK a kill with his hyper aggression, and they refused to take it. They said no, we want the 0, and they got it. They got what they wanted. So
I mean, it's got to be said, and this is obviously not a topic of discussion for tonight, but while we're just brushing past it, like an electric eel, it's probably worth mentioning. Here we are in, what is it, like 4 or 5 weeks? 4 weeks into the season. Yeah. And, we haven't seen TDK's full strength team yet.
Yeah, how about that? What's going on with that, Richard? What do you think?
Well, look, this is where I believe. Okay, so when we first talked about it back at week 1, we were like, obviously the organization has to shoulder some of the blame, right? You got to shoulder some of the blame. Fair enough.
Your players.
But then it's like week 2, week 3, week 4, and we still haven't seen the full strength lineup here. Now, let's be absolutely clear. That isn't just an organizational failing. Something has gone very, very wrong. It clearly involves Riot as well. This is, as I said then, the goalposts have been shifted about what constitutes now an acceptable, because Riot are panicking about this whole visa business. There's been too many people playing as professional esports stars and doing it very publicly on tourist visas. This is happening, right? And Riot are out there going, yeah, we can get you a visa. We've got athlete visas. Yeah, not for the people that are getting paid what isn't a salary. It comes out of a stipend, and we're all supposed to this is all linguistics. Ultimately, how it's supposed to work is Riot are paying these people, Riot are paying the organization a group of money which covers their salary. They are salaried sports professionals. That is how the business is sold. All right. But quite clearly, that isn't the case, because these people are tourists and therefore shouldn't be earning a salary of any kind, because you're not cleared to work. And Riot got wind of this and realized that people were starting to talk and chunter about it, especially people like myself in the media and other people besides. People were starting to look real close at it. So at the end of last split, they were like, from now on, you got to have, you got to be cleared to work. And that's what's ruined TDK ultimately. That's why they're like, hang on, every other season, all these other foreign imports, they've been all right to play on tourist visas and stuff, and they're like, it's not going to be that case for you. So this is where Riot has to shoulder some of the blame. And again, a little bit of transparency would have gone a long way. No one's talking about this in public. But if I was in the TDK organization, while I need to shoulder some of that blame, I'm probably still feeling a little bit aggrieved. Because ultimately what they should have done at this juncture, where they're going to finish absolute rock bottom, disgrace themselves, any chance of that being a serious organization is going to be gone when they crap out after one split, probably setting a record low as they do. They're not going to attract any sponsors. So, I mean, ultimately, this has been a waste of time for everybody involved.
Yeah, and especially for fans, it's a no-show.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they even have any, I guess they do.
I mean, in general, like just the fans of the LCS or league.
Well, yeah.
It's just a lost spot in the league. It's a lost spot in every schedule.
But that's what I mean. So at the point where it be, right at the start of the season, when it became abundantly clear that this was going to be an ongoing problem, and everybody privately knew it was, I had people coming to me and saying they're not going to be cleared for weeks. So if I'm getting told it, then the people in Team Dragon Knights must know. Maybe they're hoping Riot are going to go back on it. Riot never go back on anything. So at that point, if I'm TDK, I'm probably saying, you know what, guys, wasn't meant to be. There's still time to give our spot to somebody else. Riot, remember that we were magnanimous about it and we walked away. Like, maybe that puts a positive marker near our name in future should any other problems arise. But it's better you give the spot to somebody else. That's probably what should have happened. Or Riot should have stepped in and just insisted on it.
Right.
Instead of what's unfolded, which is an absolute farce.
Right.
Where you've got a team going 0-8 in the league, haven't played their starting lineup, and there's no indication to even suggest they're going to get their starting lineup for next week.
It's just a silly thing, and to hear it, the way the broadcasters talk about it, it is a farce. Honestly, the entire situation is, and it's silly that it was allowed to get to this point. That you have a blank spot basically, and you're in your LCS teams. Now, you mentioned much earlier actually, at this point, MonteCristo. He has taken on a new role as a co-owner of Renegade's new esports organization with Misfits as a league team and the former Voxim, I should say, Australian Counter-Strike team as their CSGO team. So MonteCristo coming in here, my first thought actually is he has a unique position as a broadcaster for Riot, technically, with OGN. Also now a co-owner of a team that is, favored to make the LCS in the North America next split. What do you think, first, about MonteCristo's position in these kind of dual roles and how he's going to work from here out?
Well, Monty has always been very smart. That's definitely one of his positive traits. And he made it very clear very early on. He was never going to 100% affiliate with Riot Games. He was never going to become a Rioter. That was never going to happen. And trust me, that was looked at. Simply wasn't going to happen from Monty's point of view. He wanted basically the flexibility that he's got by being this independent broadcaster, where he's effectively hired by OGN, even though Riot are now having more and more influence on that broadcast. But equally as well, he's now got the freedom to pursue other things without any of that Riot control. He gets the benefit of being able to go to Worlds, considered the world's best analyst. He gets the benefit of broadcasting in their strongest league. He's one of the most beloved casters, and yet he isn't a Rioter.
Now, why does Riot give him that position? Because Riot loves to, as we've seen most recently, actually, with another poor soul.
Don't you worry about that, because obviously there is... let's not pretend for 1 second that is a relationship that is healthy.
No.
We would be insane to believe that for a second. Now, me and Monty, even though we're signed to the same talent agency, we probably don't talk and hang out as much as people think we do. In fact, I haven't had a conversation with Monty about this. But again, I've got my, I'm like Varys from Game of Thrones. I am a bald eunuch. I have my spies everywhere. And, I know firsthand that actually that relationship between Monty and Riot has been strained because they don't like the fact that Monty can criticize them and does so, and has done on multiple occasions, does so very publicly to a huge following. His criticisms very often get discussed on Reddit, which we all know is the official forum now of Riot Games. So they don't like it. In an ideal world, they would have him on a contract and they would be able to bring him to heel like everyone else involved in their broadcast, but they can't. Now, we also saw recently as well, because obviously, let's not forget, Doa is in a similar position. He criticized them over the Deficio thing. Now, lots of people are speculating. I don't know how wild the speculation is, but a lot of people are speculating that Riot will simply lean on OGN, which they can now do. And remember, all English-speaking broadcasts have to go through Riot's HQ now. They changed that around about the same time. They screwed over all the people that put LPL EN together.
That's right.
There's talk about them maybe looking at alternative options. And I don't know how true that is. This is just a little bird that's out there. But I guess as far as Riot are concerned, there's proof of concept there, because they've already lost D-Man and they've already lost Joe, and they didn't plan on that at all. ESL threw that particular spanner in the works. Well, a combination of ESL and, of course, Riot moving to Berlin, which Joe and Lee were not prepared to do. So they've already proven, actually, we can lose we can lose the face, we can lose the voice of our broadcast, replace them with other people, and keep the numbers up. We've proven that. There's proof of concept there. And I'm wondering if in perhaps with these little focus groups that they have, they're looking at that and thinking we can probably get away with it. I have no doubt that Monty moving into co-ownership of Renegades now gives them the perfect excuse to say, yeah, we can't have you doing this moving forward. I mean, there was lots of rumors circulating. One of the rumors I heard, and this was presented to me by a surprisingly credible source, even though I laughed it off, was that they were going to say to Monty, well, we don't think you have an authority because you don't play the game enough. And we prefer our analysts to be ex-players. And we know you don't play the game a lot. So, they're a strange company. I think we've all established that at this point.
Say the least.
And I think ultimately, yeah, you're right. This will give them pause for thought. But I think this serves a bigger picture. I think Monty is probably aware of what I'm talking about. Again, he's not a stupid man, and I would imagine he's better connected than I am on that side of the fence. And he's probably thinking, you know what, if I have only got a split or two left, better to get into something now. Misfits, or Renegades as they're now called, they were an upwardly mobile team. Their other co-owner, Chris, was green around the gills. I've had numerous conversations with the guy. He admits, he's like, I was a little bit out of my depth, I didn't really know what I was doing. You definitely can't say that about Monty. So for that organization, it's a marriage made in heaven. They have some iconic players there at the moment. They have up-and-coming talent. They have players that are going to attract lots of interest, like Ramelia, if she decides to continue playing. So all of these factors make it a very good move to get into co-ownership of that particular time, especially if it is true and Riot are considering chopping Monty and Doa, I imagine, as well, because they seem to come as a pair from their OGN broadcast. So and there was no way that Riot, not even Riot, would have the audacity to somehow try and prevent them getting into LCS, predicated on them having an issue with Monty's criticism. They just couldn't do it. There would be an absolute outpouring of hate, and that's the one thing they always look to avoid.
It's saying a lot that even Riot did not do that sort of thing. But we'll see how it shakes out. I'm interested. I hope that we don't see the loss of our dear Korean game casters, because they do a great job over there. They do a great production and deliver great analysis. But
but look, I think everybody knows the OGM broadcast is the best. It's the best broadcast, and it's the best broadcast because Doa and Monty are allowed to go off message. They're allowed to just fill the gaps with anecdotes. They regularly call out bad plays. They're regularly harsh. It's almost as if they just treat it like a sport, but they also understand that when there's nothing going on, it's okay to talk about pure entertainment. There's never that weird pause, the anxious pause where there's been a bug. And, I've seen Jack do this on a couple of occasions. I was like, hey, we can talk about bugs. You kind of wait to get clearance first, though. There's been a number of times where a bug has clearly happened and it doesn't get cast in the first instance. You then come back and go, oh, okay, well, that's what happened. And I wear those headsets myself when I'm broadcasting. There's somebody going, yeah, okay, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to talk about, this is how it works. So, yeah, what makes OGN such a great broadcast is that it has remained organic. The talent is very unique. They're free from the Riot message. That's why it's so appealing to a lot of people. And unfortunately, I think what will happen moving forward, just simply because this is what Riot wants, and I guess ultimately it is their right to want this, should they choose. They want everything to be uniform, no matter what region.
It's my biggest gripe, actually, about the Riot broadcast, that they are so hesitant to say anything negative about the gameplay. I mean, you watch any sport. When someone fucks up, it's made apparent and explained. That's not a bad thing to have. It's okay to explain when the professional players do something wrong. In fact, it can engender some likability there, even if you have players who fuck up occasionally. It's not a terrible thing. I don't understand why the hesitance to call out teams or players for poor play or making big mistakes. But that, I guess, is the part of the Riot coda. And we all know you don't break the Riot code. You don't do that. Or you get suspended for like a year and a half.
Yeah, well, and again, I think this is the thing. I mean, like, a lot of people haven't really contextualized the Deficio ruling and what it really means, but that just shows how they will happily end your career, outside of the broadcasting medium if you go against them. I mean, as it stands, they run these background checks, as they like to call them, whenever they want on people. You dig into someone's background, you'll always find something, especially if you're setting a real low bar. Oh, did you flame in a game once? And then, okay, well, we're denying you access as a manager, as a coach, as a player, any of the paid and recognized positions by Riot. So what they've done with Deficio is effectively they've derailed his career and ensured they get to retain him as a broadcasting talent for at least a year. It's quite shocking, actually, what they've done. And, that for me is a clear message about what they'll do for anyone that's on a Riot contract. If you ever wondered why isn't Monty or Doa, why aren't they Rioters? Shit like that. These are independent people that have got other options outside of League of Legends. Like, seriously, people fall over MonteCristo to offer him work outside of League of Legends. He sticks with League of Legends because, obviously, yes, it's very lucrative for him, but it's the game he cares about currently. If that were ever to change, he'll go and do that other thing. So, and I'm pretty sure that must be frustrating for Riot.
Yeah, they don't like to not have control over everything. That's pretty clear. Sticking with League and LCS, something interesting happened that I want to get into in kind of a roundabout way. So Double Lift obviously injured himself playing basketball. Good on you for getting out there and playing the T sports, if you will.
Yes.
But it raises, to me, an interesting point. You don't really have a physically unable to perform list in the LCS or an injured reserve to go to. Like, let's say Double Lift had just massacred his finger. Like, he ripped a tendon and he could no longer play a computer game for the remainder of like the coming months. How would that affect his contract? How would that affect his ability to get paid and his ability to maintain his career? These are questions that came to me, Richard, and I think it speaks to some things we haven't answered yet, because I guess we don't anticipate these kind of injuries as much in esports. It's, after all, playing computer games for the most part. Like, when are you going to get injured playing a computer game? I guess you could fuck up your wrist like Flash did in StarCraft, but do you think these kind of contingencies need to exist in existing player contracts? Do they exist and we just don't know about them? What do you feel about this whole subject of a player like Double Lift, if this injury were to have been a little more severe, and again, very easily could have been something to keep him out for a prolonged period of time? Like, how would that be treated today in the current landscape of esports, and how could we better affect that?
So, as you guys are definitely aware at the Daily Dot, because we've ran stories on most of them, I've seen a lot of contracts in my time. And most of them are absolute garbage. Now, in all of the contracts I've seen, I don't see anything that really comes in as an injury contingency. Certainly not one that benefits the player in any way, shape, or form, or
Of course.
guarantees them any security. I've seen plenty of contracts that have stipulations along the lines of if you can't turn up to play a game for whatever reason, don't expect to get paid, or you can get dropped from the team. Um, so I've seen a lot of harsh ones in that regard. Now, in this instance, with Doublelift injuring his finger, I guess actually this is one of those things. It was always bound to happen. We're starting to see it a little bit more in Counter Strike as well. Funnily enough, we had Flipside have to get a doctor out, and they were one of the players, Bondic, had something called Quincy, which actually isn't dissimilar. It makes me wonder if I did pick it up from him at DreamHack somehow. I don't know how that would have happened, but a few people got sick out of DreamHack, and basically Quincy's like a throat infection. Your throat swells up, and it's all horrible and pussy.
Right.
And that's basically what I had for 4 days. But probably it's not. Probably it's not. That's hypochondria speaking. But anyway, they got a doctor to clear him and say, okay, you can't, you can't be involved. So all right, and then King Win, we've now got Wheaton, who is he's got sick, and they've had to get a stand in. Things are going to crop up, and unfortunately, as a calendar gets more and more dense, or something like the LCS, where the show must go on. It is a TV entertainment broadcast first and foremost. You need squads. You need squads. And CLG, fortunately, have a very able replacement in the form of Stixay to be able to come in and replace Doublelift. But I certainly think contingency-wise, it's probably better that we do start looking at this, because we would encourage our esports stars to engage in an active lifestyle. Sure, maybe Doublelift doesn't have to go for the slam dunk the funk and break the backboard. Like, maybe he doesn't need to do that and rip his hand open in the process.
All respect, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. If you're gonna play hard, right? Like, right. So I respect that's consistent with his personality. So I actually respect it. I'd be furious if I was his manager and he was there with his finger hanging off, telling me he was gonna miss LCS. But equally, I'd be like, look, did you at least break the backboard? And if he says yes, okay, fine, fuck it. Boom shakalaka. Yeah, exactly. But we're all good. But yeah, look, you need to protect yourself, and as a player, you need to protect yourself, and there doesn't need to be contingency in there. How many players are we seeing dropping out now with carpal tunnel, repetitive stress injuries? These are very real things that affect cyber athletes, and again, this is the next. It's going to be part of the next evolution in esports. We need to really start thinking about what's going to happen to our players' bodies and how we can cover for those contingencies. So you definitely need substitutes. You definitely need some form of sort of medical backing. You definitely need a contract that protects both parties, as in it's the organization's obligation to have a replacement, and also you don't lose pay or whatever. Because if his finger actually did come off, let's just say it was ridiculous and he needed an amputation or something, right? And Doublelift's out for the rest of the season. Who's to say that in the current form of things, there's certainly nothing that says they can't do it. CLG could have been like, you've only got 4 fingers on that, 3 fingers and 1 thumb on that one hand now. Fuck it, you're done. We're gonna cut you from the org because you're gonna be permanently useless.
Right.
And in most and I know this from my time as a trade union representative, any impairment or disability like that, you can't just say you're probably going to be bad at your job now, so we're going to fire you. You can't do that. That's illegal. That's a massive compensation payout waiting to happen. In esports, not so much. So I think we do need to start being a little bit more cognizant. Now that the contracts are actually worth the paper they're written on, I think we need to start being a bit more cognizant of actually okay, injuries are going to happen, illnesses are going to happen, bereavements are going to happen. We need replacements and we need contingencies for when they do.
Yeah, some of the contracts are worth paper, at least. Some of them.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I'll hold out hope that some of them are.
We'll see.
Sticking with League for a little bit longer, just a tiny bit longer. Actually, most of the night, but still. Fnatic, Richard, they are the class of Europe, to say the very least. I'm beginning to wonder if they're going to be threatened, if someone can stop them from the streak, 18 games. Is there, to kind of a two-part question here, but first the easy part, is there a team in Europe who can reasonably challenge Fnatic this split? Simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's flat out no. And we again, this is this is going over old ground because I think we both agreed with this moving into the season when we looked at what teams were going to realistically challenge Fnatic, and we listed them all at the show at the start of the season. Who did we talk about? Well, we both agreed that SK Gaming weren't going to do it.
Has not worked out too well.
I mean, we didn't expect it to go quite so bad for them.
Right.
We said maybe Elements. Turns out, Froggin's getting that sweet, sweet loving. So
where's Crepo?
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that yeah.
Yeah.
That ain't. I don't think Crepo would be digging them out of this particular hole
so?
either. And it's a shame actually because I think this roster is an improvement. I don't even necessarily think it's the new guys that are letting them down, but that's another story. Anyway, so Elements are right down there.
Gambit's
so it can't be Elements. We did say maybe Origin could be a surprise package. I'd argue they have been.
Yeah.
But for me, the biggest surprise is the continued success of H2K. And I don't mean that in a disparaging manner, but I mean the fact that they're actually better. I thought last season was going to be kind of like a high watermark for them. Like they were actually going to, everyone else was going to get better. They were going to stay the same. And as a result, they would drop down a peg or two. But actually what's happened is the overall quality in EU has improved slightly. And H2K have got better again. And you've got to give props to Kasing. I still remember him when he was called Yero back in the Dignitas UK team. And the performances he's dropping, I mean, there's a realistic argument, as incredible as Fnatic have been, that actually Kasing is MVP. Like him and Yellow Star right now are just imperious in terms of their support play. It's absolutely unreal how well they're playing. And it's no coincidence that the teams that have these incredible playmaking supports that guarantee a win you lane just by themselves, it's no coincidence that they are first and second respectively.
Yellow Star makes Jano look like a dynamic playmaker. That's just his ability. I mean, he's just a star. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it's probably hard to place Kasing above Yellow Star because Yellow Star, whatever. Right? Yeah, it's hard to place him above that because I think in terms of everything he's done for the team, the way he marshals it like a captain. Let's not forget they're still basically rookies. It's only their second split together. He is the glue that holds the team together. The way he performs, he's just incredible. But then, like I say, you've got Yero Kasing below him, and he's a guy who continues to improve. And it's crazy to think that this was a guy who, when he came out of that Dignitas UK team, everybody was like, but you've got Matt Impaler Taylor. And so he's the star of that particular outfit. That you can't have two good UK players, come out of one team. That's just insane. In actuality, no disrespect to Matt, who obviously I've got a lot of time for. I would say right now what Kasing is doing is incredible. There's a real strong argument for him being, like I say, not only the best support in Europe, although Yellow Star would probably pip it, I think, in most people's polls, but he's the other name for consideration. But also, in terms of how important he is to H2K, ridiculous. So, and again, an argument that he's the MVP in Europe. So, yeah, absolutely.
Very well, a solid second place behind Fnatic for them. But on Fnatic still, I guess the question now for them, because they seem to have the region pretty well locked up, even if they were to get upset in the playoffs, I mean, they're clearly the team to beat here. They're the class of the region. They're going to be in Worlds. Yeah. What can this team do? What can they improve on? What can change for them to have a shot at really making a run at Worlds this year? Anything?
Sorry, which team?
Fnatic.
Oh, Fnatic. I mean, okay, look, they will have a genuine shot.
Yeah. So what is that they can do to improve their to improve?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I don't. What can they do? Here's what they needed to do. It's already happened. They needed to go to an international tournament, play some of the best teams, and learn from it, and they did. They've looked incredibly polished this season to a point where I can't remember one game they've played, and I watched. I think I've watched every Fnatic game. Mostly VODs, but I do like to watch Fnatic. I can't remember one game where they've even ever looked in trouble, actually. So this is a team that are in this incredible run of form. They're probably itching to get to Worlds. Like, there's no doubt they're going to finish first. There's no doubt they can beat anybody from Europe. And let's not forget, this is a team of rookies that lost 3-2 against SKT, against a team with Baker in it, because they were unlucky. There was like a couple of moments in the in the crucial game, or a couple of moments over the series that really swung it. Now that's ridiculous when you're talking about players that had just had their first split, and this was then had Steel back in it. So now they got Reckless in. Seriously, they'll have a very good run at Worlds. I mean, they'll be right now for me. Like, again, no disrespect to H2K, who I have a lot of time for, and I've just waxed lyrical about them sometime. But Fnatic pretty much is the only thing worth really raving about in Europe right now. The rest is much of a muchness.
For you, it's really just keeping to form and maintaining that.
Yeah, they don't need to change anything. Like, seriously, they're gonna shock people. They're gonna roll heads. Like, it's not even a bandwagon at this point. It's not even a hype train. It's like completely substantiated. They've already exceeded everyone's expectations. Like, right now, if you doubt Fnatic, you're just an idiot. It's just that simple. I was doubting them right at the start when they put that team together, because that made sense when you analyze the data.
Sure.
Everybody did. Everybody thought that team was going to get relegated. Nobody could legislate for a guy with no competitive experience like Huni to be as good as he was. Nobody could legislate for a jungler who had virtually no impact in career in the form of Reignover to come here and be an absolute dominant force, like, spirit levels of dominance, right? If not greater.
Right.
You cannot legislate for Yellow Star, who went into that split saying, I'm going to give you guys one more split because we've had all these high-profile retirements and then I am done. You can't legislate for him being the best support in Europe and then sticking around and saying, do you know what? Let's build a fucking dynasty. Like, you cannot legislate for that. And all of these things happened. Now that they've happened, you've got to say, if you doubt Fnatic, if you think Fnatic are going to not take it to the next level, you're a fool. You're an absolute fool. And, I was their biggest critic when they put that team together and thought this is like one of the most unimpressive teams ever. We joked about Forbidden being the tilt master. He's been an absolute monster. This is the real deal. This is as good as it's going to get for Europe for a long, long time. So I think they're doing everything they need to do.
It looks that way. I mean, you can't see a lot of room for improvement watching them play. So we'll see if what Fnatic has today is good enough to take them all the way through to possibly a Worlds title, not just a run at Worlds. It's a possibility. It's within the field of vision. That's saying a lot for this team. Now, on Thursday, we'll talk more about Counter-Strike, but really quickly here. Na'Vi winning the Starladder final, their second title this year. I think Na'Vi have come into a good bit of form here. Guardian playing fantastic Counter-Strike. We've seen Edward kind of get back into form as of late, which is very important for that team. Do you think Na'Vi, as we've seen NiP kind of fall in the rankings, is it possible Na'Vi steps up and takes a top 3 spot like that NiP formerly occupied?
Look, Na'Vi have been getting slowly better and better and better. I think the reason it's been so deceptive, the reason why people maybe aren't really taking it in, is how slow it actually has been.
Right.
It hasn't been, look what happened when Envious, came onto the scene, and everyone was like, oh, wow, look at them. They had, all these great runs deep into tournaments. Everyone was like, oh, wow, these guys are sick. They're playing all this, like, champagne Counter-Strike. And there was a brief period of time where it was like, yeah, they're arguably the number one team. Arguably, some people still went for Fnatic, but they were right up there. Where are they now? I don't think anyone would make that argument that they're the number one team anymore.
Not now.
Okay, so and then it's like TSM. TSM were the great chokers, right? They're like, hey, we're in the semis. We've lost. We're in the quarters. We've lost.
Or playing.
Right, let's change
we've
captain,
lost.
right? And then they get better and better, and now they can beat Fnatic for fun, and everyone's like, oh well, TSM are the number one team in the world now because whenever they play a best of five against Fnatic, they win. You're like, okay, right, okay, that makes sense. And now they're away doing exams, and they're not going to be at tournaments for a while. And when they come back, we don't know what we're going to get. While all of these kind of things have been going on, everyone's like, oh yeah, that team, that team. And of course, the Fnatic dynasty has just kept on trucking. Great time to be a Fnatic fan in any game. Once again, the organization's come out on top. You've got to give them credit. Right, you've got to. Especially after all the controversy surrounding the CS team, which would have broke a lot of lesser teams and broke a lot of lesser managers. Again,
perhaps should have, depending on the veracity of some of those things. But that's another subject, I suppose.
Well, look, it's too far gone. We'll never know now.
It is.
We'll never know now. I mean, it's all academic. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that you got to say is, unless they were all cheating all the time, all along, and they still are now, then it is an academic argument whether Flusher was or not. It's completely academic.
And if they have, I'm still impressed, actually. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. If they would take balls of steel, like, you'd have it. Have all the money.
Please.
Just have it all. Yeah. Because that's the boldest thing that's ever happened. But, so it's academic. It's irrelevant. But anyway, so, while all this has been going on, Na'Vi, they brought Flamey in. And they've got Guardian, who has clawed his way back to being the number one AWPer in the world, while everyone else has kind of dropped off with the gun. And you've got, Edward, who's getting back to being a consistent player. You've got Seized, who I continually refer to as a poor man's Crims, which is a hell of a compliment. And they are capable of taking, they don't lose games by more than 4 rounds generally. It's literally like the worst you'll see in RV is like at 16-12. Usually a lot closer. That's just how they are. Even on Train in the final at DreamHack Summer, 14-14 against Fnatic on the second map, DE Train. They got a 4-on-2, and then Fnatic could just, we'll just kill you all now. It doesn't matter. The numbers don't mean anything. And that's what loses them the second map. Now, they take that map and they go to a third map. Who knows? This is a team that is getting better and better. They've already won 2 titles in 2015, more than NiP have. And NiP have only got 1. So you've got to give them plaudits. You've got to. And ultimately, at a time when TSM now enter into the great unknown, Envious are being beaten by the likes of Na'Vi, Titan have got huge problems in the road ahead, and I would argue NIP do as well. And Na'Vi have proven they can beat NIP just at this last DreamHack Summer. When are we gonna start putting Na'Vi up the ratings? It's got to be soon. We got to start acknowledging what this team has achieved. And I'm not just saying that because I've been championing them for the longest time now. But the reality is that they are that good. They are making that improvement. So yeah, it's if they continue to go the way they're going, getting towards the end of the year when the other tournaments start coming in, you got your DreamHack Winters and everything else. And just before that, obviously, your ESL majors. It's going to be a very interesting time. Very interesting time to be an RV fan indeed. And I'm convinced they're gonna cause more upsets. I don't think they're on a Fnatic level yet. I don't think they're on a TSM level yet. But I think this tournament where Envious have stumbled again, it proves they're at least on that level right now where both teams stand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've almost been hurt in the fans' perception by coming along so steadily, which should be a good thing, right? A kind of steady progress shows more, I think, long-term prospects.
Ultimately, that's what you want. Yeah. You can look at a team every tournament and say, well, they're better than the last tournament. That's a team that you're like, okay, we'll back them. But for some reason in Counter-Strike, everyone just wants the explosion.
Right. We reward that less so than we reward, for example, Envy, former LDLC, having a great 3-month run, of winning everything, or for maybe losing to Fnatic a couple times. We reward much less or so the 6-month climb by Na'Vi up to being now like a top 4, top 5 teams. It's hard to put many teams above them actually, besides Fnatic and TSM. So Na'Vi looking very strong. I'm excited to see it. I like to watch. Guardian's amazing to watch play. His ability to hit shots is just astronomical. I mean, he's never out of a round. He's sick. Capital S.
Oh, he's unreal, and I'm working on an article at the moment actually chronicling his entire player history, for which I was there for most of it, if not all of it. And I'll tell you, he's always been destined for greatness. There's no doubt. It was a surprise to me that it took him this long to get to being the #1 AWPer in CS:GO, because he did it in a far more competitive scene in CSS, in a game where the AWP was, it certainly had a higher skill ceiling and perhaps more people using it, but equally by the same token, it was a very competitive field. There was a number of top tier AWPers, far more than what there is in CS:GO. And he was the #1 AWPer in that. He was an MVP. He was a guy who was dogged by cheating accusations for all of his career. He was that good. People, the very first LAN cheat that ever got exposed in CSS, everybody said he was using it. Everybody in the competitive scene. And yet there was absolutely no evidence for this. In fact, the types of kills he was getting, door bangs, they didn't work with the cheat. They didn't lock on to hitboxes through doors. That's not how the cheat worked. So it was incredible what he achieved. I remember one event, actually, a long time ago. This is Ukesa. If Ladislav ever watches this VOD, which I'm sure he won't, he's too busy playing, he'll remember this. He turned up, he had a real bad, like an injury to his hand, and it got infected. Like, it was real bad. Most people, I think, would have just not turned up to the tournament at all. And he turned up and he had to play like Dignitas, at the peak, back when they had the ex-CGS players from Birmingham Salvo, Rattlesnake, people like this, And he could barely move his hand. And in fact, actually, people were like, typical UK players, they were like, oh, his hand's bleeding. His hand's bleeding. We don't want to play him. That's gross. Like just being typical British assholes. And he absolutely smashed them. I mean, he smashed them. They couldn't believe it. They were demanding people check his PC and stuff. And that he just never cared. He seems like a super quiet guy because he never expresses himself. But internally, he just believes, like, I'm the best. I'll beat anybody. Doesn't matter the circumstances. So yeah, he is one of the true greats for me in Counter-Strike.
Yeah, I got the chance to speak to him actually when he was in Austin about a year ago, and he was the quiet assassin, I would say. Very steely in his confidence in his play, and it shows through now. I hope that Destined for Greatness is the title of the article. It should be if it's not. That's a good way to go with your first sentence there. If you like listening to Richard talk about Counter-Strike, back on Thursday, so follow the channel for that. Richard, thanks as always for joining us.
It's good actually. This is I've just been in bed for like 3 days. So this is like the most company I've had in a long time.
The spotlight is on you, Richard, as it should be here on the loadout. Now stick with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll have our in-studio league experts coming on to talk about the weekend of LCS action. If you didn't get enough league talk, and how could you ever get enough league talk? We'll have another hour of it just for you. Just for you. Just you. Only you watching. No, not anyone else. Just you watching. So stick around. Right back with